All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have a special guest, one of our real estate partners, Cori, here. The thing that I love about Cori, and we've just talked about this just now on the call, is her experience of being here as a mother, as somebody who's raising kids and experienced different places in Portugal. And I think you're going to really enjoy this. Cori, I'll let you introduce yourself a lot better than I could possibly do.
Okay, so I have been here officially since 2012, but off and on since 2007. And I lived in Cascais for 9 years. And I currently live south of Lisbon in an area called Moita near Palmela. And I have four kids that I raise here, and they go to private school and public school. It's a mix of different things, what fits like each child's needs.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're discussing, Cori, is where people should consider purchasing. I know we're talking a little bit about Almada and these different areas, and some people are like, I have to have Lisbon because that's what they see. But you have experience in knowing where people should buy if they want to increase their value and or if they're raising a family like you are. What areas are you telling people, your clients, to go in at this point in time?
So it depends on if they have families and how close to the ocean they want to live or the mountains. For me, why the reason I sold the house in Cascais and moved south of the bridge was because we had an apartment that we were outgrowing because, at the time I only had two kids, but I was pregnant with my third. And I wanted a garden and a yard so they can run around and play, and a pool. And I didn't want to live in an apartment building anymore. So when we were looking, I just found out we had a lot more bang for our buck moving south of the bridge. And
Mhm.
we moved over to an enclosed golf course that hit all of our needs. And it was cheaper than what we sold our Cascais apartment for
Mm.
us. So we actually saved money by selling an apartment in Cascais by buying a full, what they call villa, a house, a standalone house that's not detached. There, those detached, like a detached single family home.
Yeah. I think, we're talking about this. It's interesting whenever people start coming here and they have this idea of Portugal being cheap or less expensive than where they came from. Depending on where you go, that can be the case. Cascais is not. Lisbon, for the most part, is not. But these places that you're starting to send clients to, it's really interesting to see how much more you get for your quote unquote dollar or pound or whatever, your Canadian dollar or your euro if you're here already, compared to these larger cities and the lifestyle change that you have. All right. So whenever you look at that, what do you what do you feel like people will miss out on by not being in Lisbon and Cascais? Do you feel like they're missing anything by not being in those places?
I think that is really good for like younger nomadic people that are or people that are retired and that they're like, I don't want a car, I don't want to drive, I just want to live in a city. But even living in Stubble, where you have a direct train line to the airport and you can be at the airport in 30 minutes is a lot easier. And the cost of living is so much cheaper. So number one question I get, they're like, well, how do the Portuguese live so cheap? Because they're not buying houses that require a lot of maintenance and upkeep. And they also don't live in um, like Cascais or Lisbon. Usually that's a select few of people that live there. It's not for like their everyday residents. Not that they don't have them, but my girlfriends that work on a Portuguese income that live there, there is 34 square meters for them and their two kids. Like that's a
Mm-hmm.
very small apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and where my kids have lots of space. It's a very American style home. In fact, the floor plan came from the States. But I think it depends on who you are and what you're looking for. For me, I did mind living further out from the city and having a little bit more of my own space because I drive. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not afraid to drive, and I go to Lisbon every week, if not every other week for dinner for friends, or we go to Cascais for dinner and friends because a lot of my kids still have expat friends that are here, and that's where we go to birthday parties and things. So for my house to Cascais, I'm talking 45 minutes. For my house to Lisbon, it's about 25 minutes, depending where I'm going. So
Yeah.
I'm not driving extremely far when I say I live outside the city, but I get a lot more bang for my buck. So my budget, if your budget is 500,000 in Lisbon, you're looking at like a T1, T2, depending on where you want to live.
Yeah.
And if you want to lift, a lot of Portuguese aren't living in a brand new house that's remodeled with a elevator and a
Yeah.
parking garage. They're living in like something that's like a third floor walk up, and that's how they're affording to live because they're working for it and they're not renovated. And I know people say I love the Portuguese tiles, but when your entire house is done in like green and blue tiles, it's cute at first,
Yeah.
but then maybe you might want to be like, let's not live in a crazy house. It just depends what people are looking for,
Yeah.
you know? So
Well,
that's why I would say like you get more money, like more bang for your buck south of the bridge or just moving further out. Even in like in Lisbon, if you move to like Lourdes or north of that area. I like the south of the bridge area because I'm still really close to the beaches. We are a beach family. We
mhm.
love the beaches. And I'm only 45 minutes from Cascais and 25 minutes from the airport. So for us, it works. It kind of, that's why I always ask people, what works for you?
Yeah, and I think that's always right. It comes down to that. One of the things that you mentioned earlier that I really liked, and I think other people should hear, was the difference, not just in housing prices, but the difference in actual living, your lived experience whenever it comes to spending your money. Can you give some people some insight on what that looks like?
Yeah, so I really struggled with leaving Cascais. I didn't want to leave there because of my all the friends networks I had built up. My kids were really involved in the community. I will tell you, I did not want to leave that area, but I wanted a bigger house and a bigger yard.
Hmm.
And one of the biggest things I noticed, it wasn't just like dinner was cheaper. So where if we go out to dinner in Cascais for the family, we were spending for a sit down meal is like $40, $50, which is great because
Yeah,
two people one night out in Chili's with an appetizer to share is $50, $60.
yeah,
So over in Portugal, it's a lot cheaper. But when we move south of the bridge, now we take the kids out and we spend $20 to $30 for a sit down meal, and I'll have a glass of wine. Like it's a big difference cost wise. The vet bills, we spent $140 for the annual checkup for our dog that we moved from the States here. And now our checkup is €6. And I asked the woman when she first told me, I was like, I'm sorry, what? And she's like, well, is he sick? And I was like, no. And I asked her, but what if he is sick? She's like, oh, then it's 12. I was like, oh, fine, fine. So that like because we're outside those big main touristy like expat region areas, I guess it's the same in any states. If you live in like this, Manhattan or city center or even like California, like if you go to the vet in California, it's gonna be a lot more expensive than going to the vet in Oklahoma, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So I know that those are really big distances, and here it's not because it's such a small country. It's a lot easier to find something a lot cheaper just by going 30 minutes outside of a major city.
Yeah. And I think from a living, perspective, actual day-to-day life perspective, we're used to, at least in the States, driving 30 minutes to do just about anything. So if you can say, okay, yeah, maybe I do want to live in Cascais or Lisbon, but I'm willing to drive to these other places to save money, you will save a lot of money. But if you're also willing to say, I'm going to live across the bridge and take a 8 minute ferry across, or I'm going to drive across and it's going to take 30 minutes to go have dinner sometimes, like you said, once a week or every couple of weeks with your friends, like the amount of savings and the lifestyle that you get to have now that you saved all that money, and the worry, the less worry that you have because you're keeping more money, I think is worth it for a lot of people because that's what they're coming
So
here.
even like overall, like things that we can't get rid of, like you can buy your house and not have a mortgage. You can pay cash for your car and not pay have a loan on your car. But things that you can't get rid of are like your electric and water. And this is
Mhm.
true. We had a 3 bedroom apartment in Cascais, and our electric was €160 a month.
Yeah.
And that was an average bill. We moved out to a golf course where it was a 4 bedroom on a golf course with a pool, and our electric bill was about $80 a month, and that included our gas and water. So there's a big difference in like what they call taxes or council taxes from like Junta de Freguesia. Like they charge more depending on the location and the area, and we get charged more because of the square footage of the house. So all of those make a big difference. But things that like your average living cost, the
Yeah.
biggest savings I always tell Americans too is like going to the grocery store in the States. I'm originally from Florida. Don't hold that against me. But when I go to Publix in Florida, when I visit my mom, and I get stuff to make a salad, literally like cucumbers, tomatoes, some feta cheese, a purple onion, and bell peppers. I was there and it was $28. And I looked at the woman, I was like, are you going to come home and cut it out for me? Like
Yeah.
$28.
Yeah.
So for me to go to the grocery store and buy that same exact ingredients and same exact salad, I'm maybe going to spend $6 because our fruit and veg is so much cheaper.
And fresher.
So much cheaper.
Yeah. It's it's so I mean, I think one of the things that whenever we got on the call that really made me excited about having this conversation with you is because you do have this experience. You've been here, like you said, what, over a decade now,
Yeah.
right? You do speak the language. So you have this connection, you have this experience that I think a lot of parents are going to be looking for an agent that does have this, right? I've been here for 2 years. I've had a lot of conversations with people. They're like, I'm so thankful that you're there. You have some experience, but you have a plethora of experience. With that being said, I know you mentioned that you do some real estate transactions personally for yourself. Do you want to talk through some of those things for people to understand if they're looking to invest or buy
Yeah,
properties?
because um I know that real estate is something that you can never go wrong in buying, right? Like I mean, you could technically buy a bad deal, buy something that's way overpriced, and a year later it's not. But for myself, this is me personally speaking, and I love finding a deal. Like for me, it's not just doing real estate; it's doing a good deal.
Yeah.
So I will find bank-owned properties. Generally, I like to find something that doesn't need renovation, or maybe just like some paint or furniture. And the last property I just bought, it was a bank property and I paid 67,000. It was a T1 on the other side of the bridge. And I put 1,100 euros in it. That included buying a dishwasher
Mm.
and 'cause you rent them partially furnished here.
Yeah.
So I literally went to IKEA and I bought some furniture, a table, chairs, no electronics, but I did all this $1,100 worth, including a new paint job on the T1. And I had it for about 3 months and turned around and sold it for over $100,000. So
What a
that's
win.
the thing is that there's so many good investment deals if A, you're willing to look or put the time in. And I have no problem spending time to make $40,000 in a couple months
Yeah.
for me personally.
Yeah.
Where a long-term rental, which is what my next investment is going to be, is to buy something that's cheaper, partially furnished also. Rentals are commonly partially furnished here, which is kind of
Mhm.
weird for me from Florida. I don't know how it is in other cities, but um and I'm going to do long-term rental on it. And the reason is because I can mortgage something if I have a long-term rental in there for really cheap. For example, the apartment that I'm looking at right now, my mortgage will be around 180 euros a month and
Wow.
that's with me having 10% down.
Yeah.
180 euros a month. And I'll turn around and I'll rent that for 600 or 700 euros a month.
Yeah.
And because I'm a single, my taxes will only be 25%. And you pay that at the end of the year. You can pay it quarterly too. It's 25% of what like your gains tax on it.
Mhm.
So even though I'm only spending $100, 100 euros a month for my mortgage, and then I'm renting it for 600, 700 a month, I'm
Yeah.
really only out of pocket maybe $50 a month. So that means I'm putting $500 a month in my pocket for long-term rentals. Long-term rentals are in desperate need in this country. I'm sure if anybody's moving here or looking here, if something is on the market on Monday and it's off the market by Wednesday and they're gone.
Yeah.
Like
It
it's
doesn't last long.
almost impossible to find long-term rentals here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I mean, it's something that's really needed. Like there's a big hole. And because people are desperate for them, they're willing to pay a little bit more for
Yeah.
long-term rentals.
Yeah. Well, I think, if again, those of you who are clients that will be watching this, you'll want to work with Corey. You're going to have somebody that has experience doing this. If you're a mom or dad looking for a parent that has the experience of having their kids in different places, private school, public school, right, international schools, you're going to have somebody that can give you that same experience and somebody who actually cares about you, right, and wants you to be happy and really wants to know what your lifestyle is. Corey's going to be your go-to person. Before we end, Corey, is there anything else you want to add or discuss so that people know this before they jump on a call with you whenever they have their discovery call with you about moving here?
I always tell people this, the one like sticker shock, things move slower here than they do back home. Like even asking for your checks, sometimes you're like, hey, can I get my check? Hey, can I get my check? Where in the States are like, here, do you guys need dessert? Here's your check. Pay when you're ready. Like it's
Yeah.
very different, just the restaurant experience. The other thing is most family restaurants don't open until 7 p.m.
Hmm.
My youngest is 4 years old and their bedtime is 8 o'clock, 8:30 most of the nights.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go to dinner at 7 o'clock at night and
Yeah.
then have to wait an
Deal with
hour
everything.
for
Yeah.
with everything. So I generally found that there are loopholes. One, a mall food court, which I know it's a mall, but they like sit down restaurants inside of our malls. And the other thing is Indian food. It's something that I love, my kids love. Most Indian or like Indian Italian restaurants. I think
Yep.
they're delicious. But most of the Indian restaurants are open at like 6 o'clock. So that's like little tricks that I found. People like, where can we feed? Like you can't even get a chicken takeaway unless it's from a grocery store before usually 6:30 or 7 p.m. And that's just to get it ordered and then go and pick it up and bring it home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
those
love
are
it.
just little like tips and tricks that I had. But I do love living here. I don't have any desire to move back home. I love raising my kids here. I tell everybody it's the equivalent of being growing up in the 80s. It's safe. My
Yeah.
kids can walk to school, they can go out in the playground and I just yell, like, get home when it's time for them to get home and get
Yeah.
dinner, bath, and it's a sense of security and safety
Yeah.
that I love about Portugal.
That's wonderful. Yeah, if you're looking to go back in time a little bit, but still have all the things that you want as a, you know, person who loves your modern life to have your everything that you need for the most part, but still allow your kids to stay out and be safe and feel comfortable with them doing stuff. This is definitely one of those places. That's why we chose it as a family as well. So I'm glad you added that. Those of you who will be working with Cori, you can see she's a very authentic person, which that's the type of people we try to work with, people who actually care about you and your lifestyle. And I think you're going to love working with Cori. Cori, I thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy jumping on this call. You had your kids, you got your work, you got everything else. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.